Well, from ritual to theater, actually, it comes before Turner and before me. That's the Cambridge Anthropologist, so-called. In other words, Gilbert Murray and Jane Ellen Harrison, and then Theodore Gaster. I don't know if any of these names mean anything to you or not.
Yeah, Cambridge.
But they called themselves anthropologists, though they never were in the field. And they were around the turn of the century. But in a book called Themis by Jane Ellen Harrison, she was a classical scholar, Gilbert Murray, who was another classical scholar, wrote an excursus into the origins of Greek tragedy. And he picks up on Aristotle and he tries to show how Greek tragedy emerges out of a particular kind of ritual. Then Theodore Gaster expands that into a theory about the sacrifice, the annual human sacrifice of a kind of god king who then gets resurrected, Christianizes it in a certain way, and tries to conflate ancient Greek, Middle Eastern, and Christian mythology in telling a story of the tragic sacrifice and then resurrection of a year king. And it's around a late winter, springtime festival. And of course that's very interesting because in Christianity, you know, the placement of when Easter comes is obviously a rebirth. It's not so much about the crucifixion as it is about the resurrection. I don't know if it's true here. In the United States, of course, eggs are a very important part of Easter, the Easter egg hunt. Bunny, rabbits, I don't know if again, but rabbits, chocolate eggs and rabbits, because rabbits reproduce so much. So it's all this kind of business, fertility and so on. So they called themselves anthropologists, and they developed the thesis from ritual to theater. So I was doing and I wrote a critique of that in an essay called Approaches to Theory and Criticism, which probably was collected in one of the editions of Performance Theory. But that's an early essay, 1964 I wrote it, I think, or 65. It was published in 66, first in TDR and then in Public Domain, which is my first full book. And I critiqued that even back then, saying that theater could not have simply, that's a chicken and egg thing, that theater may have originated in ritual, but ritual may have originated in theater, because theater and ritual are both performances. And that's when I began first to use the term performance to kind of include both ritual and theater. Actually, it became to include ritual, theater, and play. So Turner, however, I think, being so concerned with his, his training, and I'm trying to think, I know what I'm trying to say, but his tradition, which would be Max Gluckman and Milton Singer, Gluckman about performances and studying culture, and Singer about cultural performance, he would see the more traditional Aristotelian that ritual is first and theater is later. And I, very early on, rejected that. I don't think, it's part of my investigation into early human culture. And ritual, especially not ritual ethologically speaking, but ritual in terms of religious ritual, belief ritual, the enactment of belief, seems to me to be pretty sophisticated. So we couldn't have become Homo erectus and Australopithecine, and the first thing we do is these sophisticated rituals. There has to be something, I would just seem that telling a story, performing, dancing, without having super elaborate meanings would be first. That's why when I did start to finally write about animal behavior, like certain of the chimpanzees, that maybe not that Goodall was studying some others, when they discover food source, they go kind of crazy, and they jump up and down. It's kind of like that. So maybe humans went crazy, and jump up and down. In other words, before it had meaning in a ritual sense. So I thought of ritual as a as a sophisticated cultural development. So how could it be first? Yeah. And I thought that that was just a mapping backwards by anthropologists who accepted it of the religious rituals, the religious myth rather. Yeah. You know, in the beginning was the Word. You know, God created heaven and earth. Where the Edenic beginning. All of those are repeated in those theories. You know, where and the fall, in a certain sense, from these early humans back to bad middle humans, and now we're recuperating it. I just thought that that was a mythic rather than scientifically determinable thing. And I think he was intrigued by that the thesis of From Ritual to Theater and Back is basically, are we recording again? Yeah. So is basically a thesis that, yes, there's I think it's called the entertainment efficacy braid, that particular essay. Yeah, right. That there's always all performances have some degree of efficacy. They're trying to do something. Mm-hmm. And when it's a high degree of efficacy, we call such performances rituals. Mm-hmm. All performances entertain. What is entertain? They give pleasure, they pass time. You know, I don't think we should have so much of the Protestant ethic that to think if we're just entertaining, if we're just, you know, passing time, that this is not fundamentally human things. Yeah. We deeply pursue pleasure. We like pleasure. I'll stay out of the argument of what's the evolutionary advantage of pleasure. Let that go for a moment. Uh-huh. But there's obviously lots of things we do for pleasure. Yeah. You know, let's say eating. And even sometimes we do things for pleasure that are destructive. Many people are too fat. So that's too fat because they eat for pleasure, right? Pleasure. What else can explain it? They take in more than they spend, and they enjoy it. And it's sheer pleasure, and it kills people. I've got too much. You've got too much. He's very lucky. So sometimes the metabolism defends you. But anyway, pleasure is a basic human action. I was going to say pleasure is a basic human desire. That's tautological. But so that's where I felt that all rituals have a pleasurable side to them. They're entertainment as well as everything else. So when continuum. When I go to a candomblé, when I go to these things, of course there's ritual. But it's only a certain religion, certain aspects of religion, the deadly serious aspect of Christianity, where you're not supposed to be laughing and you're not supposed to be having a really good time. You know, of course, at candomblé they laugh a lot. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And candomblé, right? So it's that. And of course, I think Christianity over the long haul also did that. But there was a certain kind of Reformation, counter-Reformation, where one wanted to strip Christianity of everything. Yeah. And there's a certain austere Islamism also that's that way. And there's an austere, all fundamentalist religions tend to want to repress pleasure. But when religion is given its full flow, people, you know, they spend a lot of time, they really like it.